Hello everyone, today we're going to be taking a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. In the last episode, we saw tons of stuff happening. As we saw a couple of conflicts going on. We saw a communist civil war in Kenya. We saw another conflict between, I think, Texas and America. We see one with Finland and Norway and Sweden, and a couple other ones. But probably the biggest event on the last episode was India declaring war on Arabia and starting the Great Indian War. Now, let's get the backstory of why this happened. So, an Indian cargo ship was going to trade or send supplies to Kenya to try to stop the communists, but an Arabian ship blew it up and it sank, and only everyone died except for a specific group of people that were able to escape this way. They decided to send another ship to find it, but a Persian ship blew it up. But the Indians thought that the UAE blew it up because these two are really big partners. Then India declared war on Arabia, but just a couple days after their declaration of war, spies were caught in the capital. Well, actually, they were caught in the coastal cities. They were caught. They were able to escape the police, went to the capital, assassinated a president of Arabia. Then all these Persia, the Red Arabia, the UAE, Ethiopia, and Arabia declared war on India. But Sri Lanka, India, and Kazakhstan, as well as Turkey, have declared war on Arabia. Now, the LON responds to this as they're going to try to send troops into Arabia to try to stop India's expansion into the Middle East, Central Asia, and maybe even Europe to try to reform their empire, which scaled all around here. Now, after the assassination of the leader, a new ideology was picked, and it was still a democracy. But India, just a couple days before the assassination, they changed their ideology to communist, and they are no longer, and they weren't even supplying Kenya, but instead they were supplying communists. Now that India is a communist, their influence is now even just a teeny bit bigger. But now it's time to start the Great Indian War. So the first front that we are going to see is India's invasion into Persia. They're sending basically their whole army here. They don't have missiles, so they can't use that. So, yeah. Another front line in Persia is going to be Persia invading to Kazakhstan. They send troops. And they're going to make a spearhead to the capital, which they capture really easily. It was very close to where they were. And they will keep sending more troops to invade into Kazakhstan. Persia did not expect Turkey. Sorry guys, I'm a little sick. Persia did not expect Turkey to join this war on the side of India, and they weren't sending any troops here until now, but it was too late, as now Turkish troops are now entering into Persian territory, and now they're fighting a three-front war. Over here, a huge naval battle is taking place between India and Arabia, but also Persia is sending a couple, as well as UAE. Ethiopia is also sending some. Sri Lanka is sending some. So yeah, big naval front over here. But after a couple months of fighting in the naval, India will finally start their invasion into Arabia. Troops are sent and they will finally start their invasion of Arabia, as troops are now finally made a successful landing, but after just a couple weeks, it is taken out and every troops that was there are now evacuated. India decides to do something else, so they decide to start invasion of the UAE, which goes a lot better than, Arabia's. Arabia and Northern Arabia start sending troops into the UAE, but India, as well as Sri Lanka, keep sending naval troops to fight back. Over here in Ethiopia, they're doing some trade. They are helping the Democratic. They're helping on either side. Instead, they're kind of doing both. So yeah, but Ethiopia does technically own this island. They have a naval base as well and a military base, but they're going to be using their naval base, and they're going to be sending naval boats over here to fight off with Indian naval boats. But a twist, Vietnam and Bangladesh are going to be joining on the side of Arabia, and they're going to be sending naval troops to fight off. No battle is going to start over here because, well, Himalayas stuff over here, storms, I think. They're not just going to fight, they're just going to send naval troops or supplies. They don't really technically join the war. Over here, India keeps pushing into Persia. Until finally Persia starts sending troops to fight back, which goes quite well actually. Over here, we see Persia moving more into Persia, but Persia keeps fighting back as they send basically almost all their troops into Kazakhstan. Russia is going to be supplying Persia in this war because they also really hate Kazakhstan. But after a week of fighting in Kazakhstan, the LON finally makes the decision to kick out Kazakhstan out of the LON, banning them completely from ever joining. Now that Kazakhstan isn't getting LON help, which they never were, they are now starting to get weakened more as their economy starts declining, and they're basically in their own Great Depression. Over here in the Turkey front line, we see Persia pushing back once again until the Caucasus starts sending troops into Turkey, and they're going to be joining on the side of Persia as well as Arabia. They're going to be sending only a small amount of troops as they're not that strong, and this will be very, very expensive. Ukraine is now joining, but they're not fighting, they're just supplying, so yeah. Over here, the Ethiopian and Indian fight over here is now ended, and it ends with Ethiopian victory, and Ethiopia is now starting their invasion of India, which we'll see how that goes. But a new front line will be taking place, and that's going to be Afghanistan declaring war on Kazakhstan, as they're going to be trying to get a little bit of land out of this if they win this war, which looks like they are. Oh yeah, this war is only going to last one episode, so yeah, there you go. We see Afghanistan troops starting to circle this little lake, and they finally circle it, and they take down all the troops. Okay, back on the front line over here, we can see the Caucasus and Russian troops are now starting to send more. Russia starts sending more troops into the Caucasus to try to fight back Turkey. But a new country will be joining on the side of India, and that will be unexpectedly be Greece. Greece is now starting to get Turkish influence, and Turkey is influenced by India, so that technically means Greece is influenced by India, so they're going to be sending some troops into Turkey. Over here in the front line, India pushes them back fully, and Ethiopia's invasion into India fails like everyone else's. Speaking of India, their invasion into Persia goes even better, as they try to avoid the coast, but they do generally need the coast for their naval things, so there we go. And it looks like India is winning in their front, but everywhere else looks like they're losing. But something unexpected happens as we see fascist uprisings in wrong color. We see fascist uprisings around the country, specifically around the front lines, but they are not that strong and they're taken out. But that could lead into conflicts. Over here, Persia starts sending more troops to fight off Turkey in this war. And we start seeing the collapse of Turkey. And Turkey finally surrenders. And Turkey finally surrenders, and we start seeing Persia's invasion into Greece. But a peace treaty is now officially signed, and in the next episode we will see that peace treaty. But thank y'all for watching. See y'all in